Evil and more acts. The attitudes follow behavior principle also occurs for immoral acts. Evil sometimes results from gradually escalating commitments. A trifling evil acts erodes one's moral sensitivity, making it easier to perform a worse act. Of course, if we do something for the first time and it is actually out of the norm, of course we will feel like this is something different. And if it is a crime, it is out of the norm and is considered by our society as something bad, we would feel guilty about it. But in the long run, if we are going to be consistent doing that bad thing, of course we won't feel the same guiltiness, the same way we do it the first time. For example, if mangawat ka, and for the first time, no, you'll feel like this is bad because this is something that our society is telling us not to do because it is harmful or it is not good. But if you constantly do it for the first time, the second time, the third time, and more so, you won't feel the same guiltiness, right? And more like, you'll feel like, okay raman siya. Nangawat raman ko. It may be bad for the society. But at the end of the day, for myself, it is not that bad. We are ending up justifying ourselves or our actions, our behaviors rather, to the things that we do. Here it says, after telling a white lie and thinking, well, that wasn't so bad, the person may go on to tell a bigger lie. So for example, pag mangilad ka sa imong mother, nanguha kasing ko no, wala man. And di ba takas ra ka ana kay wala may proof si mama nimo. And you'll feel like, okay raman siya kay 5 raman siya no. Nya sunod magkadako na pud imong kawaton, and sometimes some people who do these things a lot end up mangawat sa malaing pagid na mga tao no. And even sa white lies are there to protect other people's feelings. Or for example, naglay man ko to protect your feelings. And you feel like, dili man siya bad, no? So, sometimes, mo escalate siya na mas maglay kag dako. Tapos, imo ra siya i-justify na it is for a bigger reason, it is for other people, where in fact, you're just justifying yourself because you feel like that's what's right. And harmful acts change us in other ways too. We tend not only to hurt those we dislike, but also to dislike those we hurt. We already know na ang behavior sa mga attitudes is correlates man yun sila, no? And we also have to understand na dili raman ang behavior ang reason para naatay attitude towards something. But as well, ang attitude maka-affect siya sa atong behavior. So diri niingon siya na, we tend not only to hurt those we dislike, but also to dislike those we hurt. So basically, ang hurt is nag-describe siya or nag-represent siya sa atong behavior. Meanwhile, ang dislike is nag-represent sa atong attitude. And if ato diri mabasa, we already know na kanang, mabali-bali ra di ay siya, no? Because, for instance, sa first circumstance is that we already have this attitude towards someone, or we already have a behavior towards someone. And diba, correlates raman siya. Sa next circumstance, or the next time we meet that same person, nanatay certain attitude before ang behavior, or ang behavior before ang attitude to that person. So it's like vice versa lang. Cruel acts such as the 1994 Rwandan genocide tend to breed even crueler and more hate-filled attitudes. At first, killing was obligatory, explained one participant in the Rwandan genocide. Afterward, we got used to it. We became naturally cruel. We no longer needed encouragement or fines to kill or even orders or advice. So no, for example, sa kanang mga ing-ani na cases, before daw, at first, they are pushed or they are forced to do something bad, for example, kaning killing. But in the long run, tungod kay nakaanaran ni siya, there's no need for encouragement or motivation anymore. People do it out of willingness because this is the thing that they're used to. And Basically, ang killing, if man-normalize siya, syempre, people will feel like it is normal. Or, even though it is bad, it is normal and everyone is doing it. So, it is okay. It is considered okay. And attitudes feed each other, sometimes to the point of moral numbness. Again, ang actions or behavior and attitudes is vice versa ra gyud ni siya, no? And if you constantly justify yourself that, okay, iya mangod ko gipasagitan, so valid ra pod na ako siyang gi-ing-ani, or like, he made me feel this way, he made me feel so bad, he made me feel um so bad about myself, or like iya man ko giing-ani, so reasonable ra pod or valid ra pod if ako siyang hapakon diha, ana gani. We are just justifying ourselves to the point na naanay moral numbness because of the justification, even though kabalutan na mali man siya, pero if we validate our feelings, or we validate what we do, of course there are already a moral numbness. The more one harms another and adjusts one's attitude, the easier it becomes to do harm. Conscience is corroded. So, just like what I have said earlier, no, ang konsensya nimo is like, dili na siya like mo work gyud kay imo naman siya gi-validate. So, mao lang na. To simulate the killing begets killing process, Andy Martens and his collaborators of 2007, 2010, and 2012 asked University of Arizona students to kill some bugs. They wondered, would killing a few bugs in a practice trial increase students' willingness to kill more bugs later? Here, students who believed they killed several bugs by dropping them in this apparent killing machine later killed more bugs during a self-paced killing period. Of course, if we let people do something, again, just like sa example lang ganina, if we let people do something na bad, for example, kanang killing lagi, for the first time, and ilang ma-reason out na, okay, it's not that bad, they will consciously do it again because, again, they feel like it is not that bad at all. So, yes. Our other topic is social movements. We have seen that a society's laws, and therefore its behavior, can have a strong influence on its racial attitudes. But the question is, what if those laws and norms legitimize hate? So basically, as a sociology student, we already know what social movements is, right? And we already know how influential our society is, how it moves, how it wants us to perceive things, are very influential to us, our attitudes, our behavior, our beliefs, and everything in between. But ang question daw is, what if it actually legitimizes hate at the end of the day? One of the example that I can give is trigger warning or something, and just in case that I will offend people who are very religious, this is just an example. For example, for a Christian community or kanang sa Muslim community, di ba we are very conservative about men and women. And even if indirect siya by telling na, oh, kuan man kanang wala man gyud siya directly giingon na kanang or gi-vocal gyud na kanang we hate the LGBTQIA plus community, but it is very obvious to its people, no, especially those who are very conservative, na kanang, they really do not accept, or they hate people who do not consider themselves as a man or a woman. Those people who do not follow sa Bible, no, na kanang man o woman lang yun ang naa sa kalibutan kay mao lang nakasulat sa Bible, but para sa ila kay dili man na yung ana. So like, what if it legitimizes hate, but it is in an indirect way, of course. For example, political rituals, the daily flag salute by school children, singing the national anthem, use public conformity to build private patriotism. These are social movements. When does our behavior affect our attitudes? So kano sa man makaapekto ang ato actions sa atong feelings, emotions, and beliefs, and etc. So, the attitude-action relation also works in the reverse direction. We are likely not only to think ourselves into action, but also to act ourselves into a way of thinking. When we act, we amplify the idea underlying what we have done, especially when we feel responsible for it. Many streams of evidence converge on this principle. So, gibalik na po ito ganina, no? At the end of the day daw, kay like, we only not think of ourselves daw na moad to go into action. Pero ato pud lang tawo no na to act ourselves into a way of thinking. Like for example, no, kanang wingunta na kana. Kaning sa act ourselves in a way of thinking. Like, hala, ideal kayo no if ing ani imong mga ideas or way of thinking, way of living sa imong thinking. Like for example, to be a very good woman, to be a very independent woman, dapat ing ani ko mag-think. So that's the example of act ourselves into a way of thinking. Tas vice versa rapod ang sa pikas. We think first before we do something. What we say or written can strongly influence attitudes that we subsequently hold. Actions also affect our moral attitudes. That which we have done, even if it is evil, we tend to justify as right. So basically, no, tanan daw atong i-right or we say are very, very influential sa atong attitudes. Kay, di ba, we tend to, kanang panindigan ang atong ginabuhat, ang atong iingon, o ang atong ipakita sa mga tao so far para lang makaingon na ay aning gid akong stand. And diri niingon siya na even if it is evil, we always justify that it is right. Not always, but majority of the time we justify that it is right. No, and again, we cannot blame ourselves wholly or like ang ato ra gid self kay at the end of the day, di ba? We are still influenced by our society. So this kind of thinking is just an influence out of our society, of course. Our racial and political behaviors help shape our social consciousness. It states, we not only stand up for what we believe, we also believe in what we have stood up for. Political and social movements may legislate behavior designed to lead to attitude change on a mass scale. So again, especially sa political behaviors, which is a very controversial topic, especially for us who are already adults, no, and we feel responsible to our society, even though we are still students, kay we already have the rights man to think and to vote, especially, no. So we tend to stand up for what we believe, and we also believe in what we have stood up for. Syempre, if imo nang tinuuhan, imo man ginagpanindigan, no? Kay lain pod kayo if lang ka na, ay mo ani akong gituuhan, tapos later on mayon ka na, ani na ka na ako na panindigan. Di ba lain pod siya? As a human being, it is an instinct to stand up for what we think is right, because that's what we believe for, right? In the first place, we won't stand for it if we do not believe onto it, right? Why does our behavior affect our attitudes? Again, so social psychology's detectives suspect three possible sources. So ang first is self-presentation theory. Second, cognitive dissonance theory. Third is the self-perception theory. So sa self-presentation theory, it says, it assumes that for strategic reasons, we express attitudes that make us appear consistent. The cognitive dissonance theory assumes that to reduce discomfort, we justify our actions to ourselves. In the self-perception theory, it also assumes that our actions are self-revealing when uncertain about our feelings or beliefs. We look to our behavior, much as anyone else would. So naa na tay brief no definition of these three possible sources sa as on to why our behavior affect our attitudes. But we are going to tackle the three of them in the next slides in a more in-depth way. So first is the self-presentation or the impression management. We see making a good impression as a way to gain social and material rewards, to feel better about ourselves, even to become more secure in our social identities. No one wants to look foolishly inconsistent. To avoid seeming so, we express attitudes that match our actions. To appear consistent to others, we may automatically pretend we hold attitudes consistent with our behaviors. So, diba? We all have this saying that first impression lasts, and first impression is a very important matter to, I think, majority of us. Why? Because sometimes no, ang impression ng tao sa ato kay mahimo siya rason for them to treat us right, or for them to have an impression that, oh, Glenn is a good person, or like Glenn have this kind of consistent qualities that I like, I want her to be my friend, and other stuff, other good things na atong makuha actually if we'll have a good impression coming from other people. So yes, sa self-presentation lang yun is kanang we appear to be consistent with our attitude because of our behavior, right? Kung unsa itong behavior, it affects our attitude basically, because if we do this, for example, we help people, and other people will have this impression na, oh, she's caring, I mean, nag-care siya. So, if we'll hear about it, the next time around, we are going to care again for other people, no? Because mao naman to ang impression sa ato, and at some point ganahan ba gyud ta kanang mga compliments, kanang mga first impression na kanang good siya, kanang wala pa kay kaayo na pakita or wala pa nimo napakita tanan pero good na ang impression sa imo. Next is the self-justification or cognitive dissonance. Tension that arises when one is simultaneously aware of two inconsistent cognitions. For example, dissonance may occur when we realize that we have, with little justification, acted contrary to our attitudes or made a decision favoring one alternative despite reasons favoring another. For example, if we decided na ato ni Saidan, but at the end of the day, we realized na, haway man na murag mas mo, kuan mo ko sa other side, mas mo believe man ko or mas mo side man ko sa other side, unsa may occurrence nga no kani man akong gipili compared sa other, where in fact if ako gyud siya i-reflect or ako siya i-analyze, kaning isa man gyud akong pilion, no? For example, if na ay inyo classmate na i-expel, then kamo ang pa pilion, tas imong gipili na ipa-expel siya or no-vote ka na, nisugot ka na imo siyang ipa-expel, pero later on na-realize nimo na kanang anong kaniman akong gipili na kung buto na ako na ng iyang gibuhat is dili man gyud siya pang kanang maka-expel gyud, or at least para sa imo di man gyud siya para maka-expel pero mo imong gipili. Selective exposure, the tendency to seek information and media that agree with one's view and to avoid dissonant information. So basically, ang selective exposure is there for you to justify your action, kay ba na may cognitive dissonance kay murag at the end of the day kay murag ni kuan namang ka, murag wala namang ka 100% nito o sa imong decision, or like naanay duha-duha. So naay selective exposure, meaning maghanap kag pamaagi para ma-justify imong reason. For example, kato laging imong classmate na gipapili mo para i-expel, and then diba nisuot ka na ipa-expel siya, then later on naanay dilemma sa imo kay na-realize nimo na ay ngano kana man akong gipili na at the end of the day, if imo siyang i-reflect, diba no, kay ang iyang gibuhat kay dili mo gid siya maka kanang enough para i-expel siya. It's just that you were given a choice. Then naman tay selective exposure, so naghanap kag pamaagi mga reasons para i-validate nga no imo ni gibuhat para mawala ka tong guiltiness na imong um, nabati ko gibali or kanang para mo align na pud ang imong reason para ma-validate ang imong kaugalingon sa imong first decision na gibuhat. Insufficient justification means that when we do something and do reasons or rewards for doing it don't seem very convincing or satisfying, we might feel a sense of discomfort or conflict inside us. So basically, everyone is aiming for something like rewards or reasons to do something. For example, it is very weird to do something and at some point not aim for praises or rewards from it. For example, you are good in drawing or sketching, let's say. At the end of the day, even if we are not really vocal of wanting it, it is nice to hear compliments coming from people or rewards if we try to join competitions na kanang about sketching. Okay, for example, if people will tell you that, oh, you're so good at sketching, diba, it'll boost our confidence and it'll want us to do something more, explore ourselves in that field but in another level. So basically, at the end of the day, naayapon tayo mga instances na gusto nato na ma-compliment kita or makadaw kita at something. But there is an insufficient justification is kanang if dili daw ta ma-convince or ma-satisfy, there is a discomfort or conflict inside us. So, for example, mingon ka na, ay, passion gid na ako ang sketching, passion gid na ako ang drawing. So, at the end of the day, let's say na nagkuha kag program sa architecture and na-realize nimo later on na nag-architecture ka na, dili mo ko satisfied enough or like, ay nga no, ing animan siya, no, like, ako ni gipili for the sake of kuan kanang praises, reward, because I feel like I am good at it. Because to begin with, why am I praised if I'm not good with it, right? So, sa insufficient justification kay murag naanay kibali kanang kuan yan, murag siya dili enough na kuan sa imo in the long run, dili siya enough na kanang pagpalipay sa imo tungod kay dili na siya same. Like atong una kanang murag satisfy siguro ka reason why nagpadayon ka ana, pero later on or in the long run na-realize mo na ay dili man siya enough. How an insufficient justification principle works with punishments. Children were more likely to internalize a request not to play with an attractive toy if they were given a mild threat that insufficiently justified their compliance. When a parent says, "Clean up your room, Joshua, or I'll take all of your toys away." So Joshua won't need to internally justify cleaning his room. The severe threat is justification enough. So, mo ni sa given example, like I do not have to have an in-depth reason for me to clean my room. Kay, in fact, I was already given a consequence kung unsay mahitabo if I won't do it. So kanang sa insufficient justification na ay di na ako kailangan na kanang i-justify gid na ko why ako ni buhaton. Tungod kay naa na may consequences nagi prison. Ako na lang siya buhaton with no question. Kay kabalo naman ko sa possible consequences. Dissonance after decisions. Big decisions can produce big dissonance when one later ponders the negative aspects of what is chosen and the positive aspects of what was not chosen. So, diri na slide is makita nato na sa picture ang home for sale. So, I am assuming na this couple bought the house, no? And sa dissonance after decision is basically kanang kung sa kuan lang is kanang pagsisi gani, regret on the other hand kay ang interpretation ani niya kay okay, you made a big decision then later on you regretted it kay like na-realize mo na okay, I bought a house and a house is a very good investment at the end of the day, but like what if na-realize mo na ay Ano nagpalit naman mig house in the first place? Let's say ang house is 100K. Yan na mo'y savings na 100K yun exact. So you bought the house. So wala na yung nabilin sa inyong savings. So naalagi mo balay pero wala na po mo'y lain kwarta kay let's say na ang sweldo ninyo kay next month pa. So naanda yung pagsisisi na kanang kanya na mo magipalit ang balay na kanang dili pa man siya enough kay exact naman po na nga mong money. So na day regret after the decision mo ng dissonance. Next is the self-perception. The theory that when we are unsure of our attitudes, we infer them much as would someone observing us by looking at our behavior and the circumstances under which it occurs. So basically sa self-perception lang no kay kadang we try to look to ourselves but in other perspectives. Mura man is yan ng looking glass self no. Pero sa kanina case kay murag kuan ka nang we try to look at ourselves but kanang ay what if iput na ko shoot to someone else's and I'll try to look to myself like okay ba ko and stuff like that. This is to justify ourselves for our behavior in under different circumstances kaya para ato pud daw ma wait kung like ay okay ra ba ko behavior sa ingani and stuff if I am someone else, is it okay to do this or like dili ba siya like weird tawon or dili ba too bad if ingani ko buhaton and if sa other perspective same ra pod ba di ba sila malain and stuff like that. Three theories explain why attitudes follow behavior. So, mao naman to sila no ang self-presentation, self-justification, and self-perception. So, there is an example nato is tingon siya na. Sa self-presentation, tingon siya, I look like a cool smoker. So, that is presentation, right? Then sa self-justification naman siya, I've been wanting all day for this. I know smoking is bad for me. Oh well, the statistics aren't as awful as they say. Anyway, I'm very healthy. I won't get sick. So sa self-justification, literal na iyan ang justify why naga-smoke siya. Then sa self-perception, here I am smoking again. I must like smoking. So no na anay recognition that she must like smoking that much because she's basically a smoker because she's smoking. Expressions and attitude. Facial feedback effect. The tendency of facial expressions to trigger corresponding feelings such as fear, anger, or happiness. So basically, if in literal sense, no, kanang if we see people making faces, it doesn't matter if they're laughing or they're mad, kay kanang it affects us no or feeling like halabas nasugo siya kanang okay ra ka mag-joke ko ngani na mga cases. So facial feedback effect is a very important aspect, especially if we try to observe people or if we try to be very sensitive towards them kay ano nag-joke lagi ka dihaan nga wala siya ni katawa, meaning wala siya malipay nimo and it should not be considered as a joke anymore because joke is supposed to be kamo duha ang nalipay ana gani. So like there are a lot of different kanang interpretations sa face. This is very symbolic kung sa sosyo pa. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. When people do something they enjoy without reward or coercion, they attribute their behavior to their love of the activity. External rewards undermine intrinsic motivation by leading people to attribute their behavior to the incentive. So basically, natin ginatawag na intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So basically, sa intrinsic motivation is when you do something even without expecting a reward coming from it. Like for example, lagi ka nang mutabang ka, ya wala man ay rewards, guys, right? Kanang help lang yun kay ana lang because you like it. You like helping people. And that's a very nice thing to do, and at some point or majority of the time wala man gyud na reward kanang okay, you get compliments but that's just it, and sometimes di man gyud ka makaget ng compliments all the time. Meanwhile, ang sa external ang sa extrinsic motivation is you do something because there's an incentive to that specific behavior. Like for example, if magkuan ka, mag-work ka, do not tell me you work tapos dili ka bayaran. So syempre, at the end of the day, ang imo aim is like, okay, I'm working because of course I need money. There is a reward at the end of the day, or at least if kinsinas imong kuan imong pasweldo nga ni. Oh, so like ay pagka 15 anapod ko sweldo. Pagka 13 na anapod ko sweldo. Sa next 15 days na anapod. The over-justification effect occurs when someone offers an unnecessary reward beforehand in an obvious effort to control behavior. What matters is what a reward implies. Rewards and praise that inform people of their achievements, that make them feel I'm very good at this, boost intrinsic motivation. Rewards that seek to control people and lead them to believe it was the reward that caused their effort. I did it for the money, diminish the intrinsic appeal of an enjoyable task. So basically, sa over-justification effect is kanang mura mag-imo nag-iimhan mo kang galingon, no? Like, nag-una ang reward, kay para, imo gid siya buhaton. Di ba, nanay mo yung ana na cases, di ba? At some case, may yung tana, tahay nagbuhat ang task. Tapos later on na ay reward, na, I deserve ang pod na ko ni. Stuff like that. Pero diri, kay bali siya, kanang buhatan ni mo na, murag naanay, reward, which is unnecessary pa siya kay wala pa may action na nabuhat coming from you, but it is a way for you to boost yourself to do that thing. Kay for example na ay maguna ako kaon kay para naagid ko naagid ko energy para buhaton ni later on mangyana gani, but it is very unnecessary, especially if busog pa ka ana ba, like ang main purpose ra gyud niya kay bali is para mas ma-boost ka to do the task. Dissonance as arousal. Can we say that one of the theories is better? Dissonance theory wins out on one count. Having attitudes and behavior disagree does seem to produce arousal, especially if the behavior has unwanted consequences for which the person feels responsible. So basically, dire, ang iyarang explanation is, if ang attitude ng behavior mag-disagree na to one another is mag-produce na siya arousal, meaning kay naanay murag kibali conflict ba between them. So kanang especially no if like ingani imong attitude tas lain imong behavior, tapos it is a certain action where you feel like you're responsible for it because basically that's your action at the end of the day man, no? So there are this conflict between the two na already. So next is the self-affirmation theory, a theory that people often experience a self-image threat after engaging in an undesirable behavior, and they can compensate by affirming another aspect of the self. Threaten people's self-concept in one domain, and they will compensate either by focusing or by doing good deeds in some other domain. So, kibali sa self-affirmation theory daw is kanang self-image threat if mo engage ka sa undesirable behavior. Like for example, no, you are someone na dili yun ka into away, tapos a circumstance happened where you were part of this gubot, tapos mayon ko na hala ano naka-appeal mo kung ani na dili mo ko yung anin, stuff like that. So imo siya i-try pag reflect, tapos may feeling mo na hala di na po ako anat ing ani yun, stuff like that. Like gusto maingon ng mga tao mga nga na cases kay bali siya ang self-affirmation theory. So makuan kan ko na hala ba sila nila pagkuan sa ako ilang pag lantaw sa ako and stuff, bas ilay nilang perception sa ako, ilay na ilang treatment sa ako tungod kay ing and stuff like that. Mga na yung sa self-affirmation theory. So, ang ending kay naakailain buhaton to compensate and refocus again in good deeds kaya para murag masalimdan katong imong bad na gibuhat. Self-perceiving when not self-contradicting. Dissonance theory successfully explains what happens when we act contrary to clearly defined attitudes. We feel tension, so we adjust our attitudes to reduce it. Dissonance theory then explains attitude change. In situations where our attitudes are not well formed, self perception theory explains attitude formation. As we act and reflect, we develop more readily, rather, accessible attitudes to guide our future behavior. So, diri ay no, is like, sa dissonance theory daw is, kuan ka nang if mo differ na kibali ang attitude nato, maka-feel na tag tension, no, about it, and we try to adjust our attitude to reduce that certain tension kay syempre mura man kag ma-uncomfortable about it ba. And then, at the end of the day though is self-perception theory can explain why this attitude formation exists about sa mga ani na mga cases. Summing up, why does our behavior affect our attitudes? So sa self-presentation theory, which is atong na-present kanina but we are going to tackle it again here, assumes that people, especially those who self-monitor their behavior, hoping to create good impressions, will adapt their attitude reports to appear consistent with their actions. The available evidence confirms that people do adjust their attitude statements out of concern for what other people will think. But it also shows that some genuine attitude change occurs. So, mao na to no, naanay kibali conflict sa imong attitude, no, nanay mga contrary circumstance. So sa self-presentation kay murag ang iya pon kay like ngano na may mga contrary events kay bali sa atong attitude. So for example, lagi if buutan ka, then tungod kay syempre just because buutan ka dili man napasabot na anghel ka, no. So napoy mga moment na high blood bud kay nga na ba na mga cases, and then a circumstance happened where you just bursted out because you feel like it's too much anymore and you're not like that. People are not used to you being like that. So murag at the end of the day kay if mag self-reflect kay hala man ako maning gibuhat no na kanang people are not people are not used to me being like this and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we try to appear consistent with what we do or how people perceive us, our attitude towards things. So at the end of the day, tungod kay contrary man siya, kato nato na action gibali na nasukotan stuff like that. So mo nang ma-uncomfortable ta. Tapos at the end of the day kay ang self-presentation theory kay murag di ba mo adjustment kita. So mobalik na pud kita sa point na kanang ay kailangan i-consistent gid na ko akong action, no, and stuff like that. Two of these theories propose that our actions create genuine attitude change. So, ang dissonance theory explains this attitude change by assuming rather, that we feel tension after acting contrary to our attitudes or making difficult decisions. To reduce that arousal, we internally justify our behavior. So, mauna lang ito sa dissonance theory is, lagi na may change sa attitude at makafeel man lagi tag tension. So para dili siya mo arouse kibali, we again try to internally justify our behavior. It further proposes that the less external justification we have for our undesirable actions, the more we feel responsible for them, and thus the more dissonance arises and the more attitudes change to come into line with our actions. So again, more ang understanding naman yun diri no kay we justify ourselves lang yun. Ana lang. Like if we do something bad, we justify nga nato ning gibuhat. Kaya lagi, iya mo gipasuko, so ako siyang gihapak. Iya man po nasala kay in the first place. Iya man ko gipa-feel ani ana gani. So murag guilty na ka kay mo siyang gihapak, hala ko ra ba siya gihapak, tas violence ba na di ba yan na maayo. Pero siya man nagbuhat ana. So ang ending, kani pud ang ako action tungod ra pud na niya. So naa nay justification. So ang guilty na siguro nung nimo nga gihapak nimo siya kay malesen siya. Self-perception theory assumes that when our attitudes are weak, we simply observe our behavior and its circumstances, then infer our attitudes. One interesting implication of self-perception theory is the over-justification effect. Rewarding people to do what they like doing anyway can turn their pleasure into drudgery if the reward leads them to attribute their behavior to the reward. So, mali gina ang sa self-perception theory again no kanang assumes that if weak ra daw ang imong attitude, ang ato daw behavior ang atong i-observe. And one of the implication ng self-perception theory is atong over-justification effect katong murag una nga niyang unnecessary rewards before ang ay una ang unnecessary rewards kay para murag ma-boost imong self to do that thing. Like mga ganitong example ganin na if kaon sa po yung para kuan ako'y energy sa ing ani pero busog pa si ka di gyud nimo kailangan mo kaon na gani just to reward yourself. Changing ourselves through action. To make anything a habit, do it. To not make it a habit, do not do it. To unmake a habit, do something else in place of it. So, that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.